This is the instructional how-to video for the Piquet Entertainment Group. Got your battery for the 12-volt lighting system. Remote for the winch. It's in the ceiling. Fuse panel for the 12-volt lighting system. And then your battery charger. 100 amp panel. 20 amp independent circuits. Right side panel feeds the right side of the trailer, which is passenger side. Left side panel feeds the driver's side part of the trailer. These are the handles for the scissor jacks. Use these as backups. I would encourage 3/4 inch socket and an impact gun to make it much easier. Winch in the ceiling. Wire for your ceiling fan that you will be adding. Fire suppression tank, control head, sandwich prep here. Your warming cabinet warming up. These are the racks for the warming cabinet itself. Got the fridge next to the hood system, 36 degrees. And the freezer here right behind it at -4. Interior and exterior light switches and awning switch located right behind that freezer. Make sure that you minimize the gaps in the filters. As you can see, these do slide from side to side, so you want to keep those gaps very minimal. Keep them as close as you can together. This is the drip pan that hooks on the dial pins located here. You'll need to monitor that daily. And then your drip tray itself hooks onto the dial pins and allows what grease doesn't collect in the filters would drip down into the drip pan that angles and goes to the drip cup itself. I highly recommend cleaning these filters every day, if not every other day, depending on how much you use the system itself. Always make sure that you allow ample time for those filters to dry before going back into use. This fire suppression system is live and ready to go. You will need to have your local fire marshal and fire suppression company come out and tag and certify the system. Always have the exhaust fans running when you have the cooking equipment on for proper safety. If you have too much excessive heat because the exhaust fans are off, there is heat sensors that could trip the system, and everything in the tank would then dump out onto everything in the trailer itself. So for lighting the equipment, very simple. Making sure that everything is in the off position. So before I ever turn the gas on, first protocol is making sure everything is in the off position. Even the deep fryers, you'd want to make sure that both are off. And then both systems are off. When doing that, you have no gas coming into the trailer as long as everything's in the off position. Have your hood fans on. You only need to run one tank, so we'll have this tank off. We'll come over here. We'll turn the valve on to the tank itself, pressurizing to the gas valve. At that point, it's going to be in this position. You would turn to the on position itself. You should only hear the line charge. You should not hear any gas coming through this system on initial startup. It is very important that anytime anyone is starting up the gas with all the equipment in the off position, when they charge that line, when they turn this gas valve on, they'll only hear a pressurizing of the line. If you hear continuous gas flow coming through here, immediately shut that valve back off and go inside and inspect. If everything's in the off position, because this line runs below the trailer, any road debris can damage, if not break, the piping, which could be a very hazardous cause. Because propane is heavy, the gas would stay under the trailer and be very explosive. So again, you only want to turn one tank on at a time and be very attentive to the pressurizing of that valve. Now, because I've been doing testing, I've got my pilot lights lit. Again, I'm going to light that pilot, each one of them. Now, once I have the pilots lit, then I can activate the burners itself. But you never want to turn these burners on until that pilot light is activated. With the pilot lights, there's so minimal gas coming through, you can never hear it through the regulator itself. But if you had one of these burners open, you would hear that gas coming through. So again, you always want to make sure that all the burners are in their off position and never force light anything. Again, there's enough propane coming out of that pilot with that burner in the off position. Also, we have the grates wired with metal baling wire that wraps around the frame of it. Eventually, due to excessive heat, it will break. Simply replace it with more baling wire for safe transit, so to speak. We don't want these burners bouncing off and hitting something. Then when it comes to the charbroiler, same thing. It's going to stay in the off position, and you're going to light that pilot like you see there indicated. Once that pilot is going, then you have full control for turning the burner on. We'll come over to the griddle. It's going to be the same thing. Everything stays in the off position always until those pilots are going. And you go to the end of the flexible style hose, and that's when you're going to light that pilot that you see lit. Same thing for the one right beside it, as well as the one right here as well. Now once those pilots are going, then you have full access to go ahead and open those burners up. But do not do that until you have the pilot lights lit. Now for these 3 pieces, they do have drip trays. So for the griddle, all your remnants that you need is waste. Go in this cup, monitor that cup daily. I will have that pan as well as this drip pan for the charbroiler and the drip pan for the 4-burner. I will have all of that in the refrigerator for safe transport. I'm going to go ahead and show the operation of the fryer, and then I'll turn it off and explain how to light it. So right now I've got this off. I have the pilot on, and as you can see, the thermopile is lit. Every time I go to a deep fryer, the first thing I do on startup, again, this stays in the off position, is on, off. What I'm doing is making sure this thermostat connects with the gas valve. And at that point, then I'm going to rotate to where the L meets the red dot and allows you to push in. You have to push in and hold here while administering fire with big lighter to the thermopile there. Because it's already been hot, that pilot stays activated. Then at that point, you can rotate to the on position. As long as your thermopile is good and hot, again, you have full control for that. Always make sure that you turn that back off when finished, as it's no longer needed. Also, there is instructions for the lighting here on the inside panel of each fryer. There is a drain tube in the paperwork that threads into here, allows you to open up and dump the oil before every transit. Do not need to transport with hot oil or even cold oil at any time. So definitely have a approved container for dumping the contents in for transit. Again, on, off, rotate to where the L meets the red dot. You push in. While pushing and holding, you light the pilot itself. Which again, it's still good and hot. Once that's lit, you generally have to continue to hold this pilot in place for 15 to 20 seconds. Once you can release this pilot button and that stays lit, you rotate to where the on meets the red dot, and you have full control for the thermostat. That is how you safely light your cooking equipment. Again, plan on having quite a few of the lighters itself. Now in the fridge next to the hood system, I have the paperwork for each deep fryer and the drain tube, as well as the manuals. You have for the warming cabinet, the fire suppression system, the crumb pokers for the fryers, and then each manual for the cookware and refrigerator. Also the lava rock and all of the contents for the fridge in its original packaging. I do highly recommend someone taking the time to go over and read each one of the manuals for proper cleaning and safety. Once you are finished with your cook items, always turn off the tank, or turn off the regulator valve, and then rotate and turn the tank off itself. Never leave the tank or valve on when the business is closed or in transit. You do have a pull-out step that does slide inward for transportation, allows you to pull outward. You also have roller wheels here to protect not only the crankjacks but also the gas lines themselves. Crankjacks, again, 3/4 inch socket and an impact gun. Make sure you distribute the weight equally amongst all four, and make sure you scotch the tires for safe and proper distribution. Always make sure that you pull those back up before you take and go into transit as well. Let's see, we'll go ahead and get the water heater reading. We're still heating up on the water heater itself. Again, I've got a water heater. I'm bypassing the tank due to the cold weather. We're going to winterize this also as soon as this video is done. When we winterize, generally once the tank is filled, by winterizing we'd have this valve open, and we'd open this valve for draining purposes. Once that's done, we turn off that valve to the tank, this valve to the drain, hook up an air hose, make sure that we turn the power off to the water heater. Definitely do not want power going to that. Hook up an air hose, and then we open this port here, starting with the hot water side first, blowing the lines out to make sure there's no water in the system. There will be a separate video for winterization that will be sent to you also. I'm going to go ahead and leave that valve in the off position. Your water pump switch is located here. Again, we're not using the water pump because we are going direct connection. This is pressurized city water fill that we are hooked into at this moment. You'll do need a food grade water hose for that itself. Your freshwater tank fill is this port here. This is the non-pressure side. If you need to run any bleach or sanitizer in the tank, do so through that port itself. Always make sure that valve is locked up once the hose is disconnected. As far as your wastewater connection, you can hook up a 3/4 inch or you can hook up a 3-inch RV, standard RV hose. Once that hose is hooked up, this gate valve pulls out to the side, as you can see here, and your water will flow out. Once all contents are finished, do shut that valve back off, remove hose, put cap back on for transit purposes. I'm gonna go ahead and drain the system out so there's no water in for freezing purposes. Got your door hold back here for the door, that way you can close off and have the intended screen door in place for adequate fresh air. Highly recommend checking that these are torqued before every time going in transit, making sure you have proper air pressure. Definitely once a year you'll need to take this to a trailer place and have them lubricate the bearings itself unless you have the proper tools for greasing the bearings themselves. You got your manual opening roof vents. If you want to open those up, simply turn those open, allowing fresh air to come in when cooking, but always make sure those vents are closed and locked down for transportation, as crosswind can damage, if not break, the roof vent. Got plenty of storage space for your cleaning chemicals, also below your sink area as well as above your sink area. So now you'll see that the gas is in the off position. Again, all those burners need to always be in the off position when shut down, but also, most importantly, in the off position amongst startup. Being that that is the case, you can go ahead and turn the exhaust fan off, as it's not needed because there's no gas coming into the trailer. We'll go ahead and turn the generator off and go over it in just a moment. As you've seen, I turned the breaker off that gives power to this plug itself. This is your NEMA 1450. You have two of those, one plugged into my hardwire panel and then the other one plugged into this generator. As always, make sure you got proper oil levels as well as fuel, making sure that you're full. On startup, this always needs to be in the off position. When it's cold, as far as a cold start, pull your choke out, hit the button for powering the unit itself. Once it's running, slowly push the choke back in. Once the unit's been running for approximately 20 to 30 seconds, then you can turn the power on to this plug. But do make sure this plug is already plugged in for safety protocol itself. We will have your generator strapped onto the tongue itself here momentarily. I will go ahead and take the paperwork and put it in the refrigerator inside. Also, I will go ahead and pull the power cords up through the cable hatches themselves and have them stored out of the way after we get done with our final mopping. As far as shutdown procedures, you always want to make sure that all those lights are in the off position so there's no power drain. And you also want to make sure that your awning is retracted back in for safe protocol. You can turn off the fridge and freezer by those switches located there. And you can also turn off the warming cabinet by its switch. As far as the sandwich prep and the under counter, those will turn off with the trailer itself. As always, make sure that those roof vents are closed, making sure that once the winch cable goes out and hooks to the D-ring, pulls the door up, nobody needs to be in way of this door. It's very, very heavy. So once that retracts back up, these bar locks need to stay to the outward position. And then once it is retracted back up, those bar locks will be locked. Of course, the scissor jacks will be removed before transportation and put inside as well. As always, making sure that all water connections are disconnected, all crank jacks are in the upright position. Tanks always need to be strapped in place and pinned. Gas always needs to be in the off position, making sure that all tail lights, brake lights, and running lights work and all doors closed and fastened. as well as step in the upright position, fixed. Power cords pulled back inside. We thank you for taking the time to view this instructional video. We hope that it means it helps with new employees or safety concerns that we don't want to happen. So definitely be very attentive to turning the gas on itself, making sure that you listen for the regulator. There should be no gas coming through on initial startup. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to us at any time. We thank you for your business and wish you the very best.